Thank you for thank you for that lovely, warm introduction. I'm delighted to be here. I really am. The last time I was here, I just couldn't get it. I felt I couldn't get it going. I have lots to say tonight. You know, Allie, thank you always for being my friend, and thank you for the Fellowship of the Spirit group. What great work you do and what good you bring to the world. And certainly to me. Allie asked me to do this, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And I looked at it and nothing jumped out at me. About 2 weeks ago, I picked up the book and there it was. We discover that we do receive guidance for our lives. How? To just about the extent we stop making demands upon God to give it to us on order and on our terms. You know what? That is the story of my life. If anybody ever wrote my biography, if I ever wrote not a biography, that's the story of my life. For a great portion of my life, I ordered from God what I wanted, and I didn't know I was doing that. And my life showed it. So I think the best way to get to it is to talk about this for about 20 minutes because it's been an eye-opener to me. It's been an eye-opener to me how much I live life and have lived life demanding, wanting myself to feel good. That was it. If I can feel good, I'm good. Then the world is a good place. And I sold my soul and I kept selling my soul, even in AA. So what does, I know people like myself. I looked at step 11. What do you mean? I can't pray for things. I'm just going to ask for God's will and for the power to carry that out. That doesn't sound right. Okay. The book says, to the extent that we stop making demands on God to give us on demand and on our terms, this is what I want, see to it, what are the results of that? You see, to the extent we stop that, we get remarkable and unexpected turns for the better. Like he says, as soon as we try to improve our conscious contact with God, and I have to tell you, it has taken me a lot of years, but I'll tell you this too. I believe that I'm not on the planet anymore to be a fine person, to dress well, to look good, to get stuff, even to feel good. I'm not here for that. I'm here for one reason and one reason only. And it's a 3-letter word, G-O-D. And when I say that, understand, I'm not talking about a religious concept. I'm talking about my concept now. As Bill says, take your own concept, and I'll tell you how I have come where I am today. And then he says, even if we are having difficulties in grief or suffering, we get new lessons for living. Man, have I got new lessons for living and new resources of courage. My life is as different today as it used to be when my idea was, I need to feel good and then life is okay. My life is just that different. And I expect to the degree that you've come along this path, so is yours. So how my life started, I started out church, Catholic, going to church and looking at the sky. The sky has always been big for me. The sky, the stars, and all of that. God, okay, then I get a problem. My retarded sister cries, and I cry with her. I go to God. I go to my family first. I ask them for milk, they give me milk. I ask them to fix my sister, and they don't. And I don't know what to make of that. And I'm unhappy. And then I go to God and God doesn't fix it. Now, now I've got a problem. And then I find a solution: alcohol. I pick up alcohol when I'm 5. And Dr. Silkworth says it clearly. He says we get the sense of ease and comfort. And that's what I got. And that's what I chase. I don't feel good when I don't have alcohol in me. And that's what I chased to the gates of insanity and death. And I didn't know. And even if you want to take a look at what happened in that period, I chased it to the gates of insanity and death, even by a 15-year hiatus in a convent. See, I was raised as a Catholic, and I knew that there was something big out there that made all the stars in the heavens and all of that. And I went to that place, and at 17 decided, well, maybe a convent is a good place. And it didn't do it. I was crazier when I left the convent than I had been when I went there. And then came the next business, because I'm alcoholic. I was alcoholic at 5. That first drink solved it. And then I go out of the convent and I find the next way to try and get peace. The bar, the men, and absolute disaster. I wound up in jail with the police chief yelling at me saying, "What's wrong with you? I've never seen an ex-nun in the convent in a jail before, and I better not see you here again." I didn't know what was wrong. I don't feel good. And if you can make me feel good, tell me how and I'll be okay. And then my next visit was to AA. 5.5 years stoned. You know, again, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to feel good. And I don't know how. I go to AA for 5.5 years, and then I drink some more and I wind up on a park bench. And the morning of May the 20th, 1973, I believe that life, this is the way life has been for me. I have always gotten exactly what I have needed, because the God that I understand wants only one thing. It wants me to serve. It wants to use me to express goodness. It wants me to enjoy. It wants, some of the scientists, even some of the spiritual writers say that God appreciates himself through us. So what happened to me at that period was I had been drinking for 35 years and I decided to take my life. I can't make it work. I haven't got a clue. And it's very interesting to me what prayer really is about, because I wouldn't have prayed that morning if you had said to me, pray and then God will say, I would have told you to get lost, because there's no hope for me. I've tried everything. This world does not work for me. I'm out of here. And so that's where I was going. And the nurse went to get my coat and I had a spiritual experience. Now, did I formally pray? Not a word. If you had said God to me, I'd have said, get lost. What happened? The compulsion was taken. See, I think God meets us where we are. God does not ask us, you know, if you look at Bill Wilson, what does he say? Here he is. He's the co-founder of AA. And when he was 25 years sober, he writes about his experience. And he's the one who had this dramatic experience. And he says, he admits that he was depressed for 15 years. Couldn't figure out why prayer, the steps didn't work, the prayer of St. Francis, none of it worked. And then he said he realized he was hobbled. You hobble horses, tie the legs together. And he couldn't move further. Why? Because he was depending on people, places, and things for his happiness. Bill Wilson, the co-founder how does this happen? That this person hasn't got it together, because it's a growth process. A tree starts out as a seed and it grows and grows, and so later on, I'll just take the time to read you this little passage. This is a fabulous book, The Language of the Heart. And in it, again, when he was about 25 years sober, he wrote this. He said that he had written this essay on step 11, which is in the 12 and 12, from which I took the quote. And he says, I went back to the book and I was astonished when I realized how little time I had actually been giving my own how much I had used my own elementary advice on meditation, prayer, and guidance. Practice that I had so earnestly recommended to everybody else, but I didn't do it myself. That's me. Recommended to everybody else. I don't even know that's what I'm supposed to do. As far as I'm concerned, prayer doesn't work. All right, so I get into AA. So you can say, well, now everything's going to be fine. What happened to me in the spiritual experience, what was lifted from me was the compulsion and the obsession. That's what was lifted, not my ideas about life, my ideas about people, my ideas about how life should work. I'm telling you, I really get it. I've had about 2 weeks to meditate on this, and I just think it's just unbelievable, because what happened, I came into AA with my old ideas. What happened here? I got abstinent. I did the steps. I got a sponsor. And you can say, well, then everything's okay. You know what it was? It was okay on the outside. Nothing changed on the inside. When I was 18 years, because here now, I've got the world going good. That's what I thought when I was little. If I could get stuff, if I could be somebody, if I could be okay, I'll be all right. Now I'm that. I got sober and I got a sponsor and I got, as Ken says, God shots, and I bought houses and I became wealthy and I built my own house. I've got it all going. And if you looked at me at that point, like this, when I say this, I think this really, for me, is the process. We have to be stripped of the ego. We've got to be stripped of the false ideas. Look what step 3 says. And look where we start in the book, in the step process. What does it say? I admit I'm powerless over alcohol. But it also says on that page 59, there is one who has all power. That one is God. Now, what have I been doing? I've been using power. Have I got power? Yes, not my own. It's not my own. If there is one who has all power, then the power that I use is God's. And when I'm using God's power to keep myself, to fix myself, to get life the way I demand that it be, I understand. I understand why at 21 years, I wound up suicidal again. Sometimes I think, yes, AA, we fix the outside. And for some, this isn't everybody's process. But for me, I hadn't gotten this yet. I didn't see this. I remember at 18 years sober, coming home in my car and seeing this passage from the big book where it says, it talks about the self-imposed crisis, and that we had to make a decision. Either God is everything or God is nothing. See? And I thought, I, what do I do? I had never considered that before. I was 18 years sober at that time. And I had done the stuff on the outside. And at that point, I said, okay, God, if you're everything, then you're going to help me. And where I wound up at 21 years was suicidal because I'm not okay. My big fight in life has always been to feel good. And this last while, the world is telling me exactly, Mildred, God is your solution. God is your answer. And from that, when you get that right, just like the book says, remarkable, unexpected things happen for the better. You know, I'll just say this. That is what happened. When I got sober, when I became abstinent, yes, I got remarkable, unexpected things that happened every time I have done what I thought was the way to go. All right. So at this point, when I'm again suicidal, what happened? God put a person in my life, a book, a tape. See, this to me is the destruction of the ego. The rest of it is all geared to this idea, coming to the point where God is everything, not just in words, but in the way I think, the way I live, the way I look at you, the way I look at life, and the energy that I give out. You know, I think Francis got it. He left his wealth and whatever because he knew he was supposed to be an instrument. I'm not supposed to be an instrument in the closet. I'm supposed to be playing the music of God to the world. And that's what the deal is. Not Mildred's music, God's music. And so I learned some things at that point. I learned that about these old messages I had taken on in childhood. And if you want to examine that further, go to the 12 and 12. Bill talks about it. You know, what I love about Bill is that he's down to earth. Yes, he was the one who had the wisdom, who had the experience, who had the wisdom to say, this is a spiritual malady. You know, if he hadn't stepped up and said that, and if you read the page where he says it, when we straighten out spiritually, then we straighten out physically and mentally. And, you know, as I look at my life, to the degree that I am straightening out day by day, spiritually, and seeing God and making God the center of my life, to the degree that I'm doing that, my life is getting easier. That's why he says, when we give up demanding of God, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing, we have remarkable, unexpected turns for the better. So that's what happened at 21 years sober. I saw and I started a new process of change. Now, it wasn't about, I'm going to get the bigger house and I'm going to get more money and I'm going to get this and I'm going to feel good. It was about this process of getting right with God and getting rid of those old ideas, because I don't know what your big deal is. I really see it so clearly. That's all I ever wanted, was to feel okay. And if I could feel okay, I sold my soul for that. And I didn't know it. You know, that's what I think step 3 is really about, because I think that false self keeps us stuck in whatever way we're stuck. It sure kept me stuck. And it says there, it's the root of the problem, self. You know, I truly believe God never makes a mistake. I've never yet seen an apple tree that grew coconuts. I've never seen a rose bush that had lilies on it. God never makes a mistake. And where is the power? It's in the root. Out of my window, I see any number of trees. And there's one in particular that I'm watching now. I can't see its root, but I know that that root is there. And as the weather warms up, the juice is going to flow, and that tree is going to get green leaves. And you know what? It's a maple tree. It's not going to have oak leaves on it. It's going to have maple leaves on it. And that's what started to happen to me when I had that crisis at 21 years. You know, I think it happened. Different people. You don't have to have a situation like I did. That's not what this is about. But I think you do have this. You have your old way of seeing the world. And back to step 3, I didn't finish that. Step 3 says we have to be rid of self or it kills us. God didn't put me on the planet to have my will. God put me on the planet to find that God is the answer, God is the power, God is the solution, God is everything. And it's been quite a journey to get to that. It was at that point, 21 years, 22 years sober, that I realized something. I don't have a relationship with God. What does our book say? Our book says, see to it that your relationship with him is right. And then great things will come to pass for you and countless others. I had lots of great things. I'm the person who was on the park bench. I'm also the person who built my own house. How does that happen? How does it happen that I live on Skid Row for a year? I'm hungry most of the time. And the day comes where I'm lots of money. I buy houses as if some people buy apples. And I make lots of money on it. I'm successful, but I'm not okay. See, that first 21 years, I think I had to experience that. I had to live that. And I learned again that fixing the outside is not what the deal is about. See, it says here that if we stop making demands on God, then God can teach us, and then life can change. So I started to meditate because I realized something. I have no relationship with God. And when I sit down to meditate and I get still, now, this is crazy. I'm in a convent 15 years, and the days were organized in such a way that every day we did at least 5 hours of spiritual exercises. Now, if you're drunk, of course, when you're doing those spiritual exercises, it kind of interferes with the benefits you get from it. But nevertheless, I had lots of experience. I had lots of teaching. I knew lots of priests. I knew lots of everybody who taught me all kinds of things. I didn't hear it. The relationship with God is something completely different. And I sat down to meditate, and I found out I didn't know God. I didn't have a concept of God. I could talk God. You know, just ask yourself sometime, what is your concept of God? When you talk about God, what are you thinking about? Do you have a relationship? I'm just asking because it came to me. I had no relationship with God. So I would sit down to meditate, and I learned something else. I learned the difference between God's world and the human world. That the third dimension world is the world of the changing. It's the world of separation. It's the world of that our daily activity. It's the world that we come here, and we don't stay here. So now I'm sitting down and I'm going to think about God. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to sit in the silence. And I learned something. That's when I started to really take a look at the big book, to take a look at everything that it says. What a magnificent volume that is about our lives and about how we're to grow and how we're to change. And that's, I wrote some things down that about here. You know, and I thought about Bill Wilson too. There he is, the co-founder, and he's out seeking people, places, and things to make him happy. And then at 25 years sober, he admits, yeah, I wrote that stuff in the 12 and 12, but I haven't been practicing it. You see, and if you know his history, he became very dedicated. I know some of the books that he read, they were in his library, and he began to study. I don't think it's about study, but I do like to talk. I do like to read books where people explain how they have practiced the presence of God, so that, you know, and I think each one of us has to do it. You know, at 21 years, I really became dedicated to trying to practice the presence of God. And I found that from the perspective of my life, there was nothing there. You go to the third dimension, and you've got 5 senses, and you see stuff, and you hear stuff, and you sense stuff, you feel stuff, you smell stuff, you taste stuff, and you're into it. And then you say, God, I know you're here. Silence. That's what it should be, because the voice is the voice of silence. But I also learned something, that I had to be dedicated. God's here. One of my mentors, and I will share that with you because I think it's so beautiful. He reminded me that years ago, we used to look at space and we said it was empty. Science now wouldn't say that. Now we know it's full of energy. This room I'm sitting in, it's got walls, it's got a ceiling, it's got books, it's got me, it's got furniture, and then lots of space. And I used to think that was empty space. And he said to me, get your remote control. I did. And I press a button, and what happens? All of a sudden, the television, it comes to life. Why? He said, why is that happening? Because this is not empty space. We can't see it, we can't hear it, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't smell it, but it's the energy of God that is here. And in science, they may call it something else. But you know something? I never, and I do it deliberately sometimes, when I'm going to turn on the television, I just look around and say, you know, it looks empty. And then I press the button and the television comes to life. And you know what? I do that with God. I've learned that if I've got to take some action to grow my relationship with God. If Allie and we've known each other a long time, haven't we, Allie? And we have communicated in different ways. And as we do that, we grow in friendship and love for each other. And I've got to do that with God. Of course, the book has always said that. First thing I do in the morning is go out to my balcony. I open the door and stand on the balcony and look at the sky. And I remind myself, you're here, God. Can't see you, but I see the sky and I see your works. And it's the last thing I do at night before I go to bed. I go open the door, stand on the balcony and look out. If I can see stars, sometimes not, but sometimes I can see the moon and I can see the expansiveness. And I'm reminded I didn't make that. There is a power that did. That power is everywhere. It's in me. And from that, things started for me to change. And I think that's why, I think meetings are really important. What do meetings do? Meetings open our hearts. We come together, and the energy is the energy of goodness, the energy of grace, because we've experienced it. And one of the things I love, because this is, to me, is so powerful. And I'm so mindful of the presence of God everywhere now, because, so I'm not asking for stuff, because I know I'm taken care of. It's like the book says, to the degree that we stop making demands. I used to be full of demands that people give me things, that people treat me a certain way, that people see me a certain way, when here it is, a world filled with love. And as my heart opens up to it, the gifts that I have received are just phenomenal. And I really believe God never makes a mistake. I remember the little person I was, asking God for this and for that and not getting it, and then feeling bad. And he says, almost any experienced AA will tell how his affairs have taken remarkable and unexpected turns for the better as he tried to improve his conscious contact with God. What really shocks me when I look at the first 21 years, I even used AA for my purposes, so that I would feel good, that I would look good. I was speaking and I was doing this. It's amazing to me how this process goes. And one day it happens. And as he says, remarkable and unexpected turns. That's one of the reasons, if it's wonderful when you hear speakers speaking at it. Isn't that what we do here? This isn't about me. This is about sharing how this whole thing has come together in my life. Every time, I'm not going to go into the details, but every time that I have made an effort to move forward in my relationship with God, something remarkable eventually has happened in the human world. It's either through a person, I come to this meeting and here's Peter talking and I think, oh my God, what a gift that is. I go someplace and something nice happens. And he says, when the hand of God seems heavy or even unjust, new lessons for living were learned. I didn't know this stuff, I'm telling you. I remember, and sometimes even when my attitude has been imperfect, as long as I'm trying to move forward. So I'll tell you what I have done. See, another one of the mistakes that I'm not going to get into it tonight because it's not the subject of what was this ask and you will receive. I asked when I was 5 years old, God, Dora's crying, help her to stop crying. When some of these Bible verses were translated, they were incorrectly translated. They left out certain things. That's not the way that passage was written, and I'm not going to get into it, but if you just read the passage the way it is in a certain translation of the Bible, it says ask and receive. And I don't think it works like that, because the implication is there has to be a change inside in that relationship. So I'll tell you what my spiritual director has had me do, and that is make a spiritual plan, because I realized something. I have a plan about certain things in the human world. I have a plan for the way I eat. I don't eat breakfast, I eat lunch, and I eat dinner, and I don't snack. That's my plan. I have a plan for how I do exercise. I have a plan for how I look after my vehicle, and so on and so on. You know where I didn't have a plan? In the spiritual. I had a sort of a plan. You know, the step 10, the reviews that we do, but there were a lot of things. I have to tell you that my prayer life went by the board if something important in the human world took place. Doesn't happen now. And I know now what to expect when I say this. God, I know that you're here. I know what to expect. I don't think it's going to turn the human world around, but I know it's here. And what I know also is how important it is how I think, how I use the gifts of God. And one of the places where I've really learned to use the gifts of God is page 55. Page 55 says, deep within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. And I remember when that hit me, maybe 20 years ago, and it became real to me. I may not like you on the outside, don't have to, but I do have to honor you on the inside, because you see, now science is even saying everything is connected. We're one. How I treat you matters. How we treat each other, how we think about each other. And that has become really important to me. The other thing that has become really important to me is kindness. Kindness. I love this. When somebody asked the Dalai Lama about his religion, and he said, my religion is kindness. And I remember when I started talking about page 55, my sponsor took me aside and he said, Mildred, if you want to talk about page 55, he said, you better start treating people different. And you know, out of that, I have learned to love the world. I've learned to love being here. I've learned to love the experience I have and learned to love what it means to grow in God consciousness. So, Allie, I'm really glad that you asked me to do this, because it forced me to take a look at step 11, and out of it jumped this. And it just has confirmed in my mind that God is the answer and that everything is okay, whether it's COVID or whatever has happened because of COVID. The answer is not in getting what my way says it should be, but letting God's world unfold and being happy with all that. So that's it. Thank you for letting me share with you.